Okay, we're going to continue with verse 5 and we'll try and finish it today so we can start with verse 6 next week. The verse is Vayikra Elokim la'er yom v'cheshach kara layla v'yerev v'yika yom echad. And Hashem called to the light the day, and to the night, to cheshach called night, and it was evening and morning one day. It's a common translation, and the translation that we did was, and it was drawn forth by a power of boundaries through pure clarity, illumination, and through thick haze is associated dullness, and thus is the power of gloom, and thus is the power of glow, illuminating one. That's how we translate it and explain some. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about that today, about some of those words, before we go on to the next verse. And it starts with the word and, at least that's the translation of the letter Vav. And when it says and, it's usually a continuation of something. What's a continuation of? You had creation happening, or at least the concept of creation happening beforehand, and what's lacking is the desire of the Creator to be established. So you have this immense, infinite thought, these thoughts coming up, but what is the desire of the Creator in that thought, or in that process, or in that creation? We don't know yet. So that is what has to be added. And it says it was drawn forth by a power of boundaries through pure clarity. What does it mean, through? What is pure clarity? There's pure clarity. In the beginning we have cheshach, thick haze, and then we have clarity for the haze. So is a clarity and haze two equal things or not? Is one higher, one lower? Does one come first, one come second? In the order of the verses, thick haze comes first and then comes clarity. So does it make a difference? The truth is, though, that the whole Torah is expressions of the Creator. That's why we say the whole Torah is names of the Creator, names of Hashem, because a name is an expression. You use a name to express yourself. Who are you? You give a name. Some people may give a different name, but generally that's what the purpose of the name is, in order to know who you're talking about. So every letter of the Hebrew alphabet is an expression of the Creator and creation, and so is everything else. And therefore, although descriptions are used higher and lower, the truth is there isn't really higher and lower, because since the Creator is everywhere, everything is in the same space, is within the Creator. Within the infinite, within the undefined Creator, everything is the same. So the higher and lower is only the way people relate to things, in order to put things in a sequence, in a way that they can understand it or relate to it. But it's not higher, lower, first or second. So in a certain sense, even what's in the Torah, it says Ein mukta mucha b'Torah, there's nothing first and nothing last. Things that the sequence is how it's written, but not necessarily how it happened in thought of the Creator, as all happens in the same place and same time. So it's like a person within themselves. They change their perspective. The person changes, but the person is still the same person in the same space. It's just because the perspective has changed, the person changes. So it's still the same place. You want to connect with God, it's within your heart, within yourself. You don't have to look for it anywhere else. People looking for God, looking for a Creator elsewhere, means they're not going to find it, because it's within them. And the pure clarity, it comes through pure clarity. What comes through? Illumination. For yourself, things don't have to be illuminated. Illumination is usually for something else or someone else. So at this point, it's all happening in the thought of the Creator. It's not yet in existence. It's just a conceptual image. It's the ability to perceive all of existence within the framework of a boundary. That's what's called illumination. You create a boundary and then you can see something within that. You don't have the boundary, you can't see it. So, okay. Now, clarity is usually understood when you have a haze. When you have something unclear, and then it becomes clear, you have clarity. If something is clear from the beginning, you never had a question, you don't understand what haze is, you don't understand what something different is. People are brought up in a certain family or in a certain way, and when they go out to another community, another place, they have no way of relating to it because the issues of that community never existed in their place. But when you grow up with issues, you know how to deal with them. So there are people who may be very well groomed and very polite and very nice and very good, but they still have no concept of what goes on in other places, and they would not know how to deal with it. So they would come, they'd have an intellectual perspective of it, but they have no relationship to it. So it's normally through haze that you get certain clarity, and without that, you don't get it. Without the issues, you don't know how to solve certain problems. There's also clarity. There's an idea of an end result. When you know what the end result of something is going to be, then you know what decisions to make in order to get there. Or you can see what things that happen will hinder, will slow it down, or make it faster, because you know the end result. When you don't know what the end result will be, then everything is just a haze. And sometimes the clarity is knowing the end result. So for example, people believe in a Messiah, in a Mashiach. Okay? That's the end result. So everyone believes in this peace, in this, eventually everything will come together in whatever way they believe it. They believe it. Now, because of that, because that's what they believe in, that to them that's a clear fact, even though it hasn't happened, they still look at it as a fact. And so everything that goes on, oh, don't worry, the Messiah, Mashiach will take care of it. Don't worry, in the end there'll be peace. Don't worry, so they don't relate to the reality of the present because to them it's clear that the end result will be good. That's not clarity. That's belief. That's blind belief. And that's stupidity. Because that type of clarity is not clarity. That's not based on reality, on things that happen. That's based on what you would like to happen. It's a projection. When you project things, that's not clarity. And when a lot of people project what will be in the future, where people are going and what's going to happen, and then they make the decisions about how things should or shouldn't be. Oh, God will take care of it. Don't worry about it. God put you in the present to look after the present, to live in the present. So instead of focusing on that, you're focused on what to you is clear, the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. That's not clarity. That's part of the haze. So a person can be in a haze and not even realize it. They think they're clear, they think they know everything, but they don't. They just fool themselves. And that is actually a common issue with society. And so when a person's actually clear on how to live in the present, how to connect to God within and live in each moment, they look around. It's not easy to find people who know how to do the same thing. It makes one wonder where we came from. Anyway, so here we're talking about clarity where it's clarity of fact, not clarity of fiction. Thick haze, what one sees as clarity may be a haze to another. What one sees as haze may be clarity to another person. Illumination is often may be associated also with a thick haze. And a reason haze is mentioned here is that the purpose of this world, of this existence, comes through the feeling of haze or dullness. For some reason, the end result of the experience that we have through all the confusion and through all the haze and everything that goes on is a certain clarity that we wouldn't have if we never had these issues. So while that may sound good, and it's true, we learn from mistakes and we learn from going through things, that we don't want to go through the pains, and I don't know why the pains exist, but that's the way the Creator, that's the way it has been, for whatever reason. Then, let's see, drawn through thick haze, okay, when we say it's drawn forth, the word kara, vayikra, is the base of the word drawn forth. The word bara, which is in the first verse, we say brought forth. What's the difference? Is that kara is more of a defined space, whereas bara is an openness. What happens in the beginning, bara, something is brought forth. The next verse, you speak about aretz, earth or desire, it's just a total confusion, a total haze. So it's like the openness of the base just takes into a kind of vacuum. It's not going, it's going, but there's no sense to it. The kara is stuck somewhere. The letter of the kuf goes down and it's stuck somewhere. And the difference between is that the kara, the kuf feels much stronger than the base. So in the first sentence of bara, it's brought forth, it's actually a softer energy than the kara. The kara is more defined and that makes it harsher. And because once you're establishing structure, you need more defined things. A general sense is okay in concept, but when you build something, you have to put in the right building blocks. So they're more defined and they're harder blocks. Dullness, which is, we translate laila instead of night, we translate as dullness. Illumination has an association with dullness. It provides an educational contrast. For example, in a person who's aware that he or she is dull, illumination is generated. The awareness is illumination. So knowing that you made a mistake, you're illuminated. It sounds interesting, but yes. But this, at the same time, the other way around, a person who does the right thing but doesn't realize their own limitation, they're actually dull. They're not illuminated. So illumination doesn't always come the way people think. Power of gloom. A mixture of power results in power that can either be or end up being gloomy, because it's a mixture. The gloom can bring about illumination when it's understood, or when the person sees within that a purpose of the Creator. Sometimes things happen, we don't know why, but if we see that the Creator has a purpose in it, that transforms it. So when the haze is only associated with gloom and not with dullness, you don't see the purpose of the Creator in it. But once you can start seeing the purpose, then it transforms it. Power of gloom. The feeling of glow is actually quite an experience. Sometimes you can feel, I don't know that it happens often to people, but sometimes people can feel this energy, this wave of energy that fills them in their connection with the Creator. It's a personal space that you feel. It's not attached necessarily to anyone or anything. It's just within yourself. And sometimes you can feel within nature, some connection, sometimes with a person. There are times you feel it to some degree, but it's really within yourself. Now, if the pure clarity, which we're talking here is pure clarity, is associated, connected with glow, and not the brightness, which is Yaim, then the ability of expression for entire levels of creation would be missed. So, see what the English word is? If you connect it with, there's boker. Boker is glow. Morning is called glow. And so if the pure clarity is connected with the glow of boker and not the brightness, then because the brightness is missing, there's a lot of aspects in creation. So there's a lot of connections here. And we'll come back to the words in a few minutes. Even glow can have a dullness. That's particularly true when a person doesn't see it. Then it's dull. So another person can be glowing. Or a person can be glowing, another person just doesn't see it. A person could be bright, but the other person doesn't see it. You could be shining, and there's still people who don't see it. There's a physical shine, there's a spiritual shine. There are people who see the spiritual shines or auras on people. And that is there's a story. There are many stories, but there's a story that I heard from my father of Reb Hill of Paritch. My grandfather came from a city in the Ukraine called Bragin, and there was they lived there for a few hundred years. It's probably near Chernobyl, and there was a kid there. His name was Hillel, and he was later known as Reb Hill of Paritch. This Reb Hill, as a kid, there was once Reb Motel, or Nachum of Chernobyl, was passing through the city. He was a famous tzaddik, Chernobyl ever, and the kid said, "Daddy, there's a fire burning on the man there. There's a fire burning." And the father said, "Where's the fire burning?" He said, over there, on top of that man, there's a fire burning." He could see the glow on top of the person. But that's not everyone is open to seeing that. We have the ability to do it, but for whatever reason, most people are blocked from seeing those things. But one can open perception, yeah.
Maybe on trial,
Yeah.
the children are probably more open to.
Children are more open, but parents often close up the children's openness by putting them in a system or saying, no, this is whatever. But yes, children are more open, and if they're encouraged to see and feel what they're seeing, we'd have more children that are more sensitive and aware as they grow up. Yeah. But you have to know how to balance that as well. Now in the sentence, in the verse here, you have Hashem called to the Or Yom, and to the Choshech called Laila. It was Erev and Boker one day. So you have the pure clarity and illumination, then you have the darkness, the Choshech, the thick haze, and the Laila, and then you have the Erev, and then you have Boker. So it begins with a pure clarity and it ends with a glow. And in between you have the other energies. Well, it's interesting, the sandwich in between, that it starts first with pure clarity and then Choshech, and then it doesn't go to Boker, but it goes to Erev and then Boker. So it kind of has all the dark energies in between and mixed up energies in between, and they're clear on both ends of it. That seems to be the order of the verse. Illuminating. Yom previously appears in the sentence. We have twice the word Yom. We have it, and Hashem called to the Or Yom, and it says, and it was Erev and Boker Yom Echad. So there's twice Yom. The first time, it's talking about a specific matter of illuminating. The pure clarity can now illuminate, has ability of illumination. It's not just clarity in its pure sense, but it can now express outwards. This Yom, the second Yom, is not for itself, it's referring to all aspects of the creation. It's setting the first stage in creation for everything. So it's not the same Yom as illumination as the first one. Because here, the Choshech, the darkness or the gloom, and the Erev, evening, or the the gloom, whatever, the Laila, is all part of this Yom. So it's like when you say a day. For some people, a day is just from sunrise to sunset. And for others, a day is 24 hours. It includes the night. So the first day here, the first Yom, only includes the light, the glow. The second Yom includes the night, includes everything. Okay, now we'll just take a few more just interesting points about the words in the verse. Vayikra, which is the first, which is drawn forth. For the these are just different commentaries or comments on the sentence. Vayikra, drawn forth. For the moment, everything appears separate. But Vayihi, Vayi'ara, Vayivoka, Vayihi, in the end, everything will be Echad, one. Everything will become one illumination. It's interesting to know that any moment within a 24-hour period, 7 days a week, it's always night or day, morning or evening, somewhere on earth. Similarly, there's balance and imbalance, shine and dullness, glow and gloom. There's always opposites. This is as it appears to us, but as it appears to the Creator, the earth appears to the sun, there is no such a thing as night. The sun has no clue about night because it's shining 24 hours a day. It's just because the earth is spinning, it has a time where the sun is shining on it and where it's not shining at that part of the earth. But as far as the sun is concerned, it's always shining. Same thing the Creator. The Creator is always shining. There is no idea of day and night, in essence. It's just as we see it and as we experience it. But that's not the essence of what it is. It says, first Vayi Erev, then Vayi Vayikra. It was evening and morning. It was gloom and glow. And that's why in the Jewish calendar, we start counting the day from the evening, because it first starts evening and then morning. And it also says in Leviticus, in Vayikra, chapter 23, Me'erev ad erev tishbasu, from evening to evening you should rest, regarding the Shabbos. So we see that the day period, the 24-hour period, is from evening to evening, so it begins at the evening. So Torah guides us to be at the evening, not at midnight, which we'll mention about soon as well, I think. Yeah. All desire comes from the Creator, the positive as well as the negative. The word Erev, gloom, also means mixed, the Arev. It can refer to people being gloomy because on the deepest level within, they don't know where they truly belong. A person can learn, be brilliant in many ways, but there's something always, why am I here? What do I really belong to? Where am I from? There's always something that creates a gloom in the person. If it's not one issue, it's another. When people become clear with themselves and realize the purpose, when everyone becomes clear, obviously the oneness will be restored to the creation. According to one commentary, the word Erev also means end. It's brought in Yalkut Mashiach Gula. It's the end of one thing happening before another can shine forth. So when you Erev, that means you have a day, you have illumination, you have glow, you have shine, and it needs to become dark. It needs to have an end. Once you have an end, then you can have the next day a new shine, a new energy. Every day has a new energy. But the only way to separate and create those new energies is by ending one before you finish the other. So Erev, in that sense, it's a gloom, it's a down. It's like before you can have another high, you have to have a down. You have a high, it stops somewhere, you have a down, then you have a new high. And the same thing with morning and evening. The evening is about stopping the light so you can have a new energy the next day. In Torah Shlema, he also quotes from a handwritten copy of Medrash Tanchuma that any time the word Vayikra is written in the Torah, it indicates something conditional. The words Or and Choshech light and darkness, or clarity and thick haze together have a numerical value equivalent of 141, which is the same equivalent of the name of Israel. Yisrael also has a numerical value of 141. It's has to be figured out, but that's anyway. Clarity doesn't awaken desire, but Laila does. Laila we translate as dullness. This is what's meant by the phrase in Yeshaya, in Isaiah, my soul desires you, nafshi v'sicha balayla. It says, my soul desires you in the night. But the base can also be with Laila. It's the coming of Laila that the soul desires, and through the coming of Laila, the soul desires and wants to connect with the Creator. In a certain sense, when a person's busy all day, they can't really connect with anything. It's when you finish with the work and just relax. You don't have television on, you don't have lights on, you don't have anything electrical. You just sit and relax in quiet and peace. And it's in that quiet where you can then connect with the Creator. And that happens during Laila, not during... When you're clear, you have no questions. There's no way to go. You're clear. Finished. There's nothing to talk about. But when it's dull, when it's not clear, then you have what to talk about. You have something to do. The word or, including the word itself, has a numerical value of 57, which is the same as the two names El and Yud Kei Vav Kei. Those two names added together equal 57. The 57 Hebrew Zon. Zon means something that sustains. When you eat and you're satisfied, you say Zon. It sustains, which is actually an interesting question. Not a topic here, but the Torah says V'chalta v'savarta, when you eat and you're satisfied, and then you should bless. But the foods we have, most of the foods we have nowadays, are so devoid of minerals and everything. They don't really make us satisfied. We keep wanting more and more. Natural food, if you eat, you feel it sustains you. The processed foods don't really do that. So it's a question: do you really have to bless afterwards if it's not sustaining you properly? Just a thought. We still say benching, but it's a thought. Chayshach is the compilation of all the shining and fiery powers mixed together and changing within it. All the spiritual fiery powers. This is in Kehelas Yaakov and in Pardes. Sharei Hatzachzaches. Okay, the first half of the night is called Leil. Leil Shemurim, Leil this. And the second half is really called Laila. The angel that's in charge of birthing is also called Laila. And the difference between the energy of midnight, before midnight, and after is the following. After midnight begins the motion or the energy which brings towards morning. So that begins, before morning shines, there's a little bit of energy coming. In other words, once the sun goes down, it becomes darker and darker. Right. But after midnight, it's already gone halfway on its spin. It's now turning towards the dawn. So slowly, light starts coming. Although there's an idea that the darkest part of the night is before dawn, but in a sense, it's after midnight. It's already spun halfway around, and now it's on its way back towards the morning.
There are a lot of people who actually take out a Torah and start learning after.
That's why there are people that will learn at midnight. Yes. Yeah. Now we have clocks. I don't know how people used to tell them when was midnight exactly. I've heard some strange ideas of how people knew it was midnight, but so far they haven't got a sundial, so I don't know.
The position of the stars?
The position of stars can tell you certain things, but to tell you exactly when midnight is, it's the movement of the sun, not of the stars. So I don't know, yeah.
It would seem to me that based on what we know about recent Moses history, that probably everyone did it a different way. But I mean, there's stories about, you know, even just in the United States, with people at different times, different places, different schedules, and we shouldn't always drive with the schedules of others, you know, train wrecks, stuff like that happened because people didn't have a stable way to be precise about timing. So I would think that the same was true when it came to judging constellations. We must have done it somewhat differently in different regions.
Well, that's true. That's a very good example of the trains before they set up the system and the train wrecks that happen because of different time zones and timing. Yeah, it is an issue, and I don't know if it really matters exactly when the midnight is, or if you just sleep a few hours and you wake up and that's midnight for you. The concept is midnight exactly, but I think
You want to make sure it was after a certain time, right?
yeah. I guess there are ways of doing it, but I've always had a clock, so I've never had to try figuring another way.
Well, I could see two Jewish guys fighting about it.
Yeah, and using the sand
No,
clocks.
wait a second.
I have more sand in my sand thing than you have.
Yeah.
You have to change every day. I take a few grains out every day, or I put a few grains in. How many grains did you put in? All right. In Isaiah it says that the clarity of the moon will be like the clarity of the sun. The clarity of the sun will be 7 times the strength of the clarity of the 7 levels of illumination. This is what has to do in the future. Whatever that means. It's just... The Talmud in Psachim also brings from Rabbi Yochanan that the day the exiles will be gathered together is as great as the day that heaven and earth were created. Shemayim and Aretz, which is what it says in Hosea, I guess too. And the children of Yehuda and children of Israel will be gathered together, and they'll place themselves one head and ascend from the Aretz. This is a great day for Yisrael. It doesn't say Yisrael, it says Yisrael. Firstly, the idea of one head is actually a very important thing, because nowadays, in Israel, for example, you have a Sephardi chief rabbi and Ashkenazi chief rabbi. And I've seen articles like, if you're supposed to be one people, you should have one chief rabbi, not 2 chiefs. And also the story of Eliyahu Navi, we travel with one family best, they should all be chiefs, and the other that only they should be one head. All should be chiefs. We have that. All the Jewish people, they're all chiefs, and everyone has their opinion, everyone fights on their opinion. The idea of one head is everyone agrees and submits to one, then you can have peace. When there's one authority and everyone follows it, then you have peace.
2 heads are better than one.
2 heads are better than one. Why? You have 2
No,
heads
no,
attached
just-
to your shoulder?
No, I'm just...
2 separate rivers.
Yisrael, instead of Yisrael, is composed of 3 words. The letter Yud, which reflects Hashem, the source of life. Zera, which means seeds. And the word El, which means power. And the meaning of this is that there'll be a day as great as the day when Bereshis was formed, when the world was seeded. As is written, there'll be Erev, that it will be Erev, and it will be Boker, all one illumination. So when it's saying Hi Vayi Erev Vayi Boker in this verse, it's not talking about it was evening and morning, or was glow and one illumination at the beginning. It's talking about Vayihi, and it will be. It's a future tense. Vayihi, and it will be in the future. Yes, Erev and Boker, all one.
So it's a conceptual formulation for, like, the thought process of what is to come.
Yes, it's a
That's the
conceptual
direction-
idea.
direction
Yes.
of, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It says Elohim invited to our Yom. This can refer to the Yom that will be for Yud Kei Vav Kei for Hashem, as it says in Joel 3 and Malachi 3, which is the day that the difficult world as we know will cease to exist in this way. Thus, this verse is referring to the future as well as the present. That's why the verse And it says, and Laila vahi erev, and Laila will then be sweet, will be Orev. Orev means sweet. That's the name of Melech says that. The Hebrew word for evening and sweet is the same word, the same letters anyway, Erev and Orev. So in the future it will be sweet. Laila comes from Tohu in verse 2, and Yom comes from Vohu. That's what's mentioned anyway in Zohar. And here are some quotes from the Zohar, that Or brought forth Yom, and Choshech brought forth Laila. There is no Yom without Laila, and there's no Laila without Yom. Therefore they are one. That's why there's no clear distinction between day and night, where it begins and ends, because they are in essence one. The difference between Yom and Laila exists only in our realm, but not in essence. They're in the same place. In the Laila, everything returns to the source from whence it came, and thoughts are in Laila. In darkness is thought. Interesting. So, because it's all in your mind, it's like in a dark space. The light doesn't penetrate in here sometimes. Okay. I'll just tell you a little story. The story is, I read this many years ago in a Hebrew book. I haven't seen it in English. It may be translated, but I haven't seen it, so I'll just say it. The story about a thief who was caught and found guilty. And the king who ruled that city, where the thief was, decreed that he should die by hanging. Whether it's right or wrong, that's the way they ruled. And the man agreed to the judgment. However, he requested of the king that he'd like to do one thing before his impending death sentence was carried out. The thief asked the king if he could demonstrate a feat of wisdom, the secret that only he knew that secret. And if he was going to die, the secret would die with him. And so he asked the king if he could show the king the secret before he dies so someone else would know it. And the king agreed, and saying, what's this wisdom or secret you want to share with me? So the thief said, I'd like to have a seed of a fruit tree and specific herbs and essences brought to me, and the seed has to be soaked in this mixture for a while until it's ready for planting. And within half an hour of putting this seed in the ground, it will grow into a tree filled with fruit. Now, that's an amazing thing. So the king was surprised to hear that such a thing is possible. But what's he got to lose? You know, the guy can't run away. So he ordered everything to be brought as the thief requested. And once the seed was soaked in the mixture, the king and his advisors all went to the garden. They were eager to watch how the seed was put in the ground and how it would grow into a tree very quickly. Once they were gathered in the garden, the thief said, the seed is ready now, but we need to find someone who can plant it. The person who plants it has to be someone who never robbed or stole anything at all during his whole life or her life. He says, I'm a thief, and since I stole, I can't plant it because it's not going to work. I need someone who never stole anything. So the thief turned to the king's advisor and said, maybe you could plant it. And the advisor said, well, when I was a child, I sometimes told my father that I spent more money than that he gave me to buy. I used a bit more of his money than he actually thought, and so I was a child, but that's kind of stealing, and probably it wouldn't work because I was stealing in some way. And so the king turned to his treasurer and said, well, why don't you go plant it? And the treasurer said, listen, I'm dealing with huge expenses, the whole country, everything the king has, and you can make mistakes. And even though I don't intend it, but even unintended mistake, I could be stealing from the treasury also. So I may not be clean enough to plant it. And the thief turned to the king and said, well, maybe your majesty would like to, your highness would like to plant the seed. And the king said, well, when I was a child, I took a long string of pearls from my father. So I did steal something when I was a kid, so my hands are not totally clean. Ask someone else. The thief fell down on his feet, on his knees in front of the king, and said, Your Royal Highness, your advisor, your treasurer, even yourself have all admitted to theft at some time during your lives. Why should I suffer death because I stole something? I'm poor, and the reason I took is because I didn't want to starve. I didn't steal a lot, I stole what I needed to live on. Well, the king saw the wisdom of the thief's argument and pardoned him on the condition that he doesn't steal again. People are very quick to judge one another. It's a big problem we have in society. You have it in the news, you have it in the temples and religions and synagogues and all over the place. Everyone loves to judge. Everyone knows, and they know. Everyone's clear who's right and who's wrong. They don't know the details. They don't even know the story half the time. And we ask people, they heard this bit and they already judge. They heard a little piece here, they judge. They're very quick to judge. They're judging others while neglecting their own faults. When you see people judging like that, it's a reflection that they're not looking at themselves. They're not dealing with their own issues. Each and everything was created with its own limitation. If it had no limitation, it couldn't exist. That's why we have to realize it's not our place to judge others, because everyone has a limitation. That's how they're created. They were created with issues. They're not a good or bad person because they have limitations. Limitations is part of being a human being. If you have it, that means you're a human being. If you don't have any issues, then you're not human. That's why we have to not judge people, and each of us has responsibility to improve and grow as an individual. If each one of us is busy tending to your own personal duties, then they wouldn't have time or the need to judge others. Because if you see your own limitations, you realize you're a human being, you have faults, so you see that in everyone else. Everyone has faults. And just as you have to live with your own, you have to live with everyone else's. The fact that people don't want to live with other people's issues or limitations or faults means they don't live with their own either. So what you can tell from the way people are is you can tell about themselves. How they deal with themselves or don't deal with themselves, how they see themselves or don't. And this is one of the things that brings clarity. The darkness that's out there, the darkness that people look at, the darkness they see, the darkness they relate to reflects darkness in themselves. A person who's not dark, a person who's just a beautiful person doesn't see any bad in another person because they're a beautiful person. A person who sees issues is because they have issues. Now, when you're with people, you have to be aware people have issues. And sometimes a person is too good, they get hurt because they don't know the boundaries. So you have to know boundaries. You have to know your own boundaries too. But everything is a reflection. And so this is where one part in creation where it talks about bringing forth the darkness and the light, the clarity and the haze. They're all one. That's all in the same person. It just depends where you are, how you're spinning, what part of your life you're in, what moment you're in, how you are. So it's all, on one hand it's creation of everything, on the other hand it's creation of each individual person. And this is something we have all the time. We have Yom and Choshech and Laila within ourselves. There are the parts that are dark, the parts that are light, the parts that are clear, the parts that are hazy. This is within each person. And if we all realize that we have these things in ourselves, then we won't be judging other people, won't be looking at other people, we'll be so busy with fixing ourselves that we'll understand other people, no matter what their issue is. And by understanding ourselves, we'll help other people, we'll be an example that you can work on yourself, and so other people can do it, and so we'll become one again when people understand this. And this is something we can learn from the 5th sentence of Genesis. Something very simple, something very practical, and we'll stop here for tonight and continue with the next verse next week.